So the question is, if they're interested in energy and they're coming in, can they do the SGE immersion or a consulting, or they can do both? And the answer is they can do both. It's designed to allow you to do both.
Yeah, I'll add to that, which is good. I'd say about 40% of the class these days is really interested in the energy sector. So not only can you do both at the same time, but you're able to do it with a group of people that have similar interests. This ends up being really important in terms of having a support network, a number of projects in the immersion this year. We're currently doing 10 projects. I think 4 or 5 of them are related to the energy area. So it gives folks that are interested in this area really great hands-on experience.
And I would add to that doing any one of the immersions where you've got a project allows you to take the skills that you've been learning along the way in management cases and applying them again to a real life business problem, which strengthens your ability to be successful in the summer.
Mark, actually, can you add to that and speak to what type of careers people go into from the SGE immersion?
Yeah, they go everywhere. So we've got alumni that are on Wall Street. We've got alumni that are in I think every major consulting firm. We've got alumni that are in all the major CPG companies doing brand management. We've got a lot of alumni that are now doing brand management or consulting in smaller boutique firms because they've been out for a while. They worked in one of the major companies, and then they decided to make a career switch and drill down even deeper into area of expertise that they really enjoy. We've got a number of alumni now that are on the West Coast doing a lot of high-tech work and product management work. So they really go everywhere.
Yeah. And this is a point that I think cannot be emphasized enough, that if one wants to go into a consulting track, they can go there from sustainability immersion or from the operations immersion, the marketing immersion, digital technology, or corporate finance. Depending on what function you want to specialize in, absolutely, you can combine that function with your career focus on consulting and take management cases and the other coursework on top of it to go into that career path. And really, IBI and consulting are the only two things that don't match for a very good reason, and everything else.
They spend a lot of time together in the bars.
That's how they interact. Yeah, that's how we interact.
Can you each speak to about the average size of your immersions?
Shall I take that first?
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the immersions are pretty much...
Yeah, I have to repeat the question.
Yeah, the question is, what is the size of each immersion? And because some of the immersions are not represented here, I'll just start off that it's about the same across immersions. We have a good breadth of students who take different career paths. So the number of students in an immersion varies typically between 30 to 50 students. So marketing immersion, for example, this year has 40. The operations immersion has about 40 as well, and investment banking has 50, and so on. And then some immersions also get students that are from outside the Johnson MBA program. So digital technology will have about 1/3 of the class that is coming from information sciences. So these are master's students in information sciences coming from engineering. Or sustainability gets students from other parts of Cornell as well, and so does the operations immersion.
And if I think about the consulting immersion, we probably have about 100 students in management cases, maybe even slightly more than that, because you'll find some people that aren't interested in consulting also find that management cases gives them some good capabilities going into other roles, including things like IBI if they want to do presentations.
Yeah, we have, in the SG immersion this year, we have 30 Johnson students and 10 non-Johnson students. So we have 40, which is actually the target number we look to. We've been over that in past years, but 40 is a great size in terms of number of projects and the ability to actually spend time with each team to mentor them through the process.
Drew, can you answer if any specific skill sets in the financial industry are helpful in the investment banking immersion? If so, what they would be?
Sure. So are there specific skill sets in the financial services industry that are helpful coming into a career in investment banking? There certainly are, and I can point those out. I think maybe I'll start in answering that question by sort of talking about the theory of how we design the program. So we are a school of career switchers specific to investment banking. These are students that are coming from one area and they're looking to leverage their MBA and specifically the Johnson MBA to develop acumen and a career in investment banking. So the way we design the full year curriculum is we take anybody from a poet and turn them into an investment banker, or we take somebody who worked maybe in another front office finance capacity, sales and trading or lending, and move people over to investment banking as well. So if you think about it as along the continuum, if there's somebody who's really not quantitative, doesn't have any quantitative coursework, doesn't know the sort of basics of core finance, we're very adept at taking that person from all the way over here to investment banking, and we're also adept at taking somebody that's maybe a little bit closer from a skill set perspective and moving them over the edge. What I think is great about Johnson, and this really speaks to our culture, is if you think about the amount of work required to get somebody from here to here, that's a lot more hours, if you will, than somebody who's over here. So what winds up happening inside the class is the people coming in with some finance acumen help the people in their class that have less. And I think that's a really wonderful thing that develops over the course of the first year. Specific to the question of types of skills, I would say, if the language of business is accounting, the language of investment banking is sort of core finance. So things like time value of money and how to price an option and how to value a company, those are critical skills. They're all developed here. We have absolutely world-class accounting faculty, absolutely world-class finance academic faculty that develop those skills for you in the first semester. My job in the second semester, along with the academic faculty that teach our academic courses inside the IBI, is really to be that wrapper on top of your academic courses to bridge the gap between the theory and what you need to know in investment banking. And that's really how I define my role. So wherever your skill set is, we work to develop into something that looks world-class by the time you leave your internship.
Is anyone able to touch on the feedback that anyone has had from recruiters on any of the immersions?
So the feedback on the immersions, I can say that the feedback we've been getting from recruiters this year in consulting, both for full-time and for internships, has been extremely positive. I mean, it's some of the best feedback we've ever gotten in terms of the students' ability to tackle a problem, understand how to break it apart, put it back together, develop recommendations, and communicate those recommendations, as well as understanding the softer skills of leadership and teamwork. So it's something we work on continuous improvement all the time. But this year, normally every year, there's something we don't do quite as well as we should. And this year, the feedback has been extremely positive across the board on all the aspects that they're looking for.
So I'll add to that for SG Immersion. So I direct the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise. Our associate director also has an appointment in the Career Management Center. And so she works more directly with the SG Immersion students on careers, and she works more directly with recruiters. In general, students aren't basically recruiting on the SG Immersion. They're not going to recruiters and saying, hire me because I took the SG Immersion. They're saying, hire me because I have a set of skills. And then they're able to use the experience they're having in the SG Immersion to demonstrate those skills. And then land the positions that they want. From that standpoint, the feedback we get from recruiters is the SG Immersion students are strong students. One of the metrics we always use is in terms of employment, the speed with which students get employment, how many students are employed after a certain period of time. And the SG Immersion is right there with the average of the school. Some years a little higher, some years maybe it falls a little bit behind, but it's generally the average. And then same thing from the standpoint of looking at another metric is the starting salaries that students get. And there we see SG Immersion students getting higher salaries during summer employment, sometimes higher salaries in full-time employment. It's not I don't think the immersion that anyone chooses is a hindrance to what they can do from an employment perspective. But what we hear generally, and Vishal could probably speak to this better than I can, which is the students that are coming out of Cornell are strong students. The fact that the immersion is part of the program that makes them that way, recruiters are supportive of that.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think we can add a few different things to this. One is our students are generally rated pretty highly by recruiters, and the recruiter ranking of Johnson in Business Week ranking was extremely high the last time, and it has generally been keeping at a very good pace and moving up. We look at recruitment in two parts. One is interview success, which is did you get the internship that you wanted, and the other is internship success, which means did you convert your internship into a full-time offer. And programming is done for both these pieces. So that's why doing programming in the fall semester of the first year and the spring semester of the first year are both important, because the interview success depends on what happens in the fall semester, and internship success depends on what happens in immersions in the spring semester. So as Professor Pascarella said earlier, and Professor Milstein and Professor Allen said, our students are able to convert a large number of their internships into full-time offers. So more than 90% for consulting, or more than 85% for IBI, and so on. So I think those are some examples of the type of feedback that we get from recruiters from Immersion.
I have to brag too, so I can't let this question go without putting it in. So I think in addition to the numbers that Dean Gaur had mentioned, I think some of the anecdotal feedback that we get is the highest honor that a summer intern can be bestowed is they become the teacher or the go-to for their colleagues at other schools. So they're so adept at the job, and they're so knowledgeable about what the need is and what the deliverables are, that the summer interns from other classes or other schools come and ask them for help. And I think that's anecdotal feedback that we get pretty regularly.
Dean Gaur, can you touch on a little bit what the process looks like for selecting your immersion, what the timeline is, and when that would take place in the process?
Absolutely. So the question is, what's the timeline for selecting an immersion? What happens is when you come here in the beginning of August, we start giving information sessions on different immersions. So each of the immersion faculty will come before you and organize a series of information sessions about their immersions. At the same time, you start meeting with your career advisor, who starts advising you on the career path that you want to take. So you put these two things together, and then you work in your career work group, or CWG. So that's a setup that we have where you work with your career advisor and second year students to prepare for your career path. So these three things get together: the CWGs, the information that you're getting from your career advisor, and the information that you're getting from your immersion faculty. And through a series of sessions that take place during August and September, you form opinions about what immersion you want to take. And then in October, sometime in the middle of October, you make a choice about which immersion you're interested in, and you enroll in that immersion. And after that, you start having specific conversations with your immersion faculty member to see if you made a good choice about the immersion, or if there are sometimes students who aren't fully decided and they want to switch an immersion. So at that time, depending on how your career path is evolving and how your interests are evolving, you can switch between immersions all the way up to, I think, the end of December or the beginning of January. These switches are possible. So that's how the immersion selection process works. Like, if you want to add anything further to that.
Yeah, we're a little earlier. You have to make a decision about the SG immersion by the middle of December, only because we have to match enrollment to the sponsored projects.
Yeah.
We have to make sure we have the right number of teams and we have the right number of projects for teams to work on.
And
but there's flexibility there from the moment that folks decide which immersion they want to whether they want to adjust some of what they've seen. We took a student in this year in the middle of December who had selected a different immersion and then upon reflection wanted to come into SGE, and that was fine. And we had the opposite occur. We had a student that had selected SGE and decided they wanted to do something else, and that was no problem.
Yeah. And that's true for marketing as well and for digital tech, because they also have corporate projects, so we need to choose the projects early enough in advance. So, yeah.
And I think the other question, lots of students always say, well, if I want to do consulting, is there an immersion I should do? And the answer is no. Generally, we recommend that you take an immersion that's going to round your skill set out so that you broaden your capabilities going into consulting.
Gaur, you touched on something that was a great point. There's a question surrounding how much wiggle room there is for students when they do select an immersion maybe in the fall and then realize in the spring that they want to transition to something else. What's the wiggle room like for someone like that?
The question is, what's the wiggle room if you have selected an immersion in the fall and you want to make a switch in the spring semester? So typically, once the beginning of January is passed, you cannot change your immersion. So there are plenty of opportunities to decide what immersion you want to take all through from August all the way to the middle of December or so. And after that, you have to decide what immersion you want to take. And but even within the immersion, there are some choices available. So when you tie yourself to an immersion, what you're doing is you're tying yourself to the practicum course that you want to take. But besides that, there is a series of electives that are available to you, and you can add drop electives all the way into the spring semester and choose which way you want to go. So for example, if your interests switch from CPG marketing to digital marketing, then you can switch out of courses that deal with CPG type businesses such as customer relationship management and go into a course that deals with digital marketing or with designing data products or consumer internet businesses. So the choice after the spring semester is more focused on elective courses, whereas the choice in the fall is focused on the immersions. And I think this is consistent with how the market also goes. Many of our students will have received their internship offers by the end of the fall semester for, say, banking, or by pretty early into the spring semester, by end of January or so, if you're going into consulting. So more than, I think almost half of the students start getting tied down into their internship offers by that time. So your path is set and you know where you're going, and at that point, the decision about whether to switch an immersion or not typically does not arise. We don't see those cases coming up.
Yeah, can I add to that? I mean, just the experience that we've had with students. I don't think we've had students wanting to move immersions in the middle of the spring semester. There's a lot of opportunity, as Dean Gaur said, for students to understand what each immersion is and how it fits them in the fall. Being able to talk to second-year students and alumni and faculty about what an immersion really is from an experiential standpoint, what you learn, why you would do it, or why you might want to do something else. There's a lot of opportunity there to find that out. Then when you get into the spring semester, no immersion is going to make or break you from an employment standpoint for the most part. I mean, some are much more tightly tied to employment. For example, Drew's immersion, where students have got to interview much earlier, and they're going to have positions as they go into the IBI immersion. So their reason for switching wouldn't really make sense. They're already committed to that pathway. Students in the SG immersion, for example, some of them are going to be interested in consulting. Some of them will go through the entire consulting process in the fall. They'll be taking management cases in the spring. They'll do the internship interviews. And for one reason or another, they don't end up with a consulting internship. And so that requires them to rethink what exactly do they want to do as the next step, because they might have an opportunity to go for a consulting position for full-time opportunity in the second year. And so the immersion you're in actually gives you the opportunity to talk with faculty and to talk to folks that are in a similar situation to yourself to figure out what the right pathway is to get to the next step that you want to get to.
And also to add to that, a successful MBA experience requires choosing one function and then something else on top of it. So after you do an immersion, you have the entire second year available to you to pick a different concentration. So someone could do a combination of marketing and supply chains or operations. Someone else could do a combination of marketing and corporate finance. So they would do that by picking a complementary set of elective courses in the second year to complement what they are learning in their immersion curriculum.
Do any of the immersion faculty interact with any of these student-led clubs, and if so, in what capacity?
That we are extremely tightly wound with the student-led activities. So the question is, how much interaction do we have with the student clubs and broadly the student leadership on campus? So I serve as faculty advisor to the Old Ezra Finance Club, which is the finance club, the student-led initiative on campus that drives the development of investment bankers, corporate finance professionals, and asset management professionals. I meet with them weekly. I meet with the Career Management Center lead, David Capaldi, who I mentioned, weekly. So there's an extremely high level of interaction between the faculty, student leadership, and the career management leadership.
And it's the same thing for consulting for me, and I'm also the faculty member for BR Consulting. So.
Yeah, I advise both the SGE Club, the Sustainable Global Enterprise Club, which is the professional club that works closely with the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise, and also advise the Energy Club. I know there was an earlier question about energy and the interest there, and we advise both of those clubs, work very closely with them beyond the immersion, on other events, on speakers, on other opportunities to make sure that the club membership is able to leverage the resources we have here institutionally in an effective way to prepare themselves and also get the educational experience that they want.
And our faculty are active in clubs in many different ways. So supporting student-organized conferences, providing MSPs or management skills practicums that Professor Randy Allen was talking about earlier, and also mentoring students on a one-on-one basis or through various clubs. So these are various different ways in which Johnson conducts its unique and exciting immersion program. A lot of schools talk about practicum-based learning, but the Johnson immersions are really unique, and no school really comes close to what we do here. Thank you very much for joining us today for this session. It's been a short session to give you some overview, but if you have questions, you can reach out to us, and there's an email address that's available here, mba@johnson.cornell.edu. You can write to that email address, or you can write to our admissions team, and we would be very happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.